Just the money that we have on account with the school. Do what? It's like you always know. It is currently. That's a good question. The last one I saw was just at some 5. You do a good job.
Yes.
There you go.
It's a little far.
You're preventing this.
Yeah, so it might not have the right. I mean, we might get more, and so.
Yeah, the state LGB local government investment will be the same whether it's a renewal or city, so it'll be higher than that.
Yeah.
We
The
are
right number.
limited on where we can put it at
So
under state
Take
statute.
you back to state.
Well, we're on the dishwasher and milk. I don't know, man.
yeah, we'll just have to remind them they need to mute.
Waiting on one more. We do have a quorum.
Yeah.
Do I have to be elected again before I can use my gavel?
You do.
Oh, bummer.
So we'll go ahead and call the Coos Bay City Budget Committee meeting to order. And we're going to change the lineup just a hair. We're going to hold election of officers first and then move to public comments. So just like in our last meeting, we need to, or you need to elect a budget chair, and I'll open the table for nominations.
I'll make a motion for Councillor Drew Farmer to be budget chair.
Second.
There's a first and second. Are there any other nominations? Hearing none, I'll call the question. All in favor of Councillor Farmer serving as the budget chair, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Hearing none, you are the budget chair, and we can move forward with the election of the other 2 officers.
All righty. Do we have a nomination for vice chair?
I'll make a motion that Brenda Brecky be vice chair.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Yeah, you got talked into it. Motion passes. Do we have a nomination for secretary?
I nominate Coco Sutton.
Second.
All right, we have a motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Coco stuck with it. All righty. And then we are moved to presentation of the budget message. Or, public comment, sorry. Any public comment? I saw that I opened it for a public hearing later, so I got distracted. None for now. Budget message, please.
Take a moment here while we get this up on screen. Oops, there we go. I'm going backwards though. So the proposed budget has been put together and prepared on some basic city policy and practices, and those include that revenues are estimated conservatively, expenditures are based on actual experience, and incremental increases are added where needed. Reserves should be maintained at an adequate funding level in accordance with accepted accounting principles and practices, and that provides sufficient cash carryover to meet the city's needs until tax revenues arrive in November. That's commonly referred to as the carryover. Capital equipment and vehicles should be maintained and or replaced so that they're in proper working order. Replaced when budget numbers allow, and we'll talk a little bit more about that today. And then obviously the city budget is, while it's designed as a one-year document, we do a multi-year approach when we look at it so we can see what future impacts are going to be. Our budget with all funds is in excess of $73 million, and it includes north of 17.5 million for wastewater capital improvements, and a little over $3 million for street capital improvements. Our budget's designed in, or separated out into 16 separate funds. Boy, this is touchy. See if I can get this back. There we go. And you'll see it, they generally falls into the 4 categories: operating funds, reserve funds, capital funds, and debt service. In your operating funds, they're separated out. Of course, the largest is the general fund for general services at just under 19 million, and the smallest being the building codes funds. While that looks like it's a big piece of pie, actually our general obligation bond is just for one item, and that is for the debt service on the fire station. Capital improvement funds are separated. Water quality improvement funds is the largest, and you'll hear we're taking on a big project that was just approved and will be going out to bid, and that's an upgrade to wastewater treatment plant 1 in the downtown district. And then we have our multiple capital improvement funds, and then the last SDC funds, or system development charges, that were collected years ago and will remain in that fund until we undertake a project identified within the SDC plan. The reserve funds are separated out. The largest is the Jurisdictional Exchange Reserve Fund. We'll talk about that during the budget, but basically that is a fund that we received funding from the state for taking on 23 lane miles of formerly owned state highways. Under our charter, we cannot use the principal. The principal is 4.8 million. We can only use the interest gained off of that fund to undertake road improvement projects on those 23 lane miles. We have the rainy day reserve fund, and then we have what's called the CAD group, and that is computer aided dispatch group. I mentioned carryover balance. Our taxes come in beginning in November of each year, but our budget year starts July 1st. So we have a few months when we don't have sufficient revenues coming in to meet our burden, our cost burden. So we carry over funds at the end of 1 year to tide us over until those tax revenues come in. It has been a battle over the last few years because revenues coming in do not meet the expenses that are going up. This proposed budget includes using revenues from the American Rescue Plan Act of 21 to make up for lost revenues during the COVID-19 pandemic and to build back up the carryover balance. Most of the service provided to our citizens are done and provided through our employees. The city currently has 129 employees. Personal expenses comprise 25% of the total city operating budget, and that percentage, when separated out, is 60% for salaries and 40% for benefits. That has changed over the years. Salaries were a higher percentage than benefits, but the cost of benefits has been growing. The benefits include insurances such as medical, dental, vision, long-term disability, workers' compensation, unemployment, and the list goes on. We are part of the public employee retirement system through the state, and so we have made contributions through that and Social Security benefits. Our budget reflects a modest cost of living increase of 3 to 4%, but we are subject to uncontrollable expenses such as PERS and health insurance rates. Our cost of living rates, those are controlled through collective bargaining agreements with our 3 unions. So a little bit about PERS. With PERS and health insurance this year, the budget projects that we'll spend north of $6 million just on those two items. Our PERS obligations is $3.5 million, and I can share with you those rates are set by the state. And this year, I made a note because I thought it was significant. Our rates will go up between this current year and next year, $660,000 across all funds for the PERS obligation. And one might say, well, let's just get out. Well, unfortunately, the state sets the rules, and once we're in, we're in.
So we're looking at for 2 years then, the 660, or is that 1 year?
It's going up additional $660,000. Our PERS cost for this next year is just a little over $3.5 million. And we'll look at a similar rate for the next year.
But doesn't the legislature set it by annual?
Yeah.
Yes.
So we're getting the new rate for the next 2 years, this starting July.
And that's included in this, correct?
Correct. So 47% of our benefits cost is PERS related. The other portion is 36% is health insurance. So that, with all that good news about PERS and health insurance, we're going to move on to the budget. On this budget, we'll have a number of people coming up and presenting from various departments on the sections of the budget. It is back to you, and I believe we need to do a,
Public hearing.
yes.
We'll call a public hearing regarding our use of state revenue sharing funds. And we've got anybody online? Hearing none, I'll close the public hearing, and we can move on to the review of the proposed budget. For this one, the terminology is a little more extensive, so if you want some acronym soup, you can go to PDF page 148 or document page 145. Quick refresher, we've got 167 main miles of road, 90 miles of pipe, 129 employees. And we're going to solve all the world problems with just under $74 million. So, with that said, we can keep it rolling. First numbers we'll really start to see in budget format, turn up on PDF page 10.
Drew, I'm sorry. It's I cannot hear. We can't hear you online.
I forgot to turn my mic back on. Alrighty. So I opened a public hearing. Did anybody have anything online? Hearing none, close the public hearing, back to where we were. We are on document page 7 or PDF page 10, where you're looking at proposed tax levy summary. If anybody has any questions, comments, concerns on that one, if not, we'll start rolling in.
Just a one brief thing. We just wanted to relay why we have some additional pages that wasn't included in the budget when it was published.
So this is from one entry, which did not have a balancing entry. We plan to go out for a CDBG grant again. We did that in this last fiscal year. Typically, we will have a grant amount equal to the expense amount. We also typically do not put those in the budget until we've actually been awarded. We have not been awarded. I grabbed the expense out. I did not grab the revenue side out. So unfortunately, it touches a lot of pages because of all the totals throughout the, so most of these are just totals changes because of removing of that revenue.
Nicole, can you remind us what a CBG?
Yes,
grant?
Community Development Block Grant. And we're intending to use that for rehabilitation of houses. We did that in the last year. I think we did 36 homes. It's intended to keep those houses livable. In our housing crisis, that's pretty crucial to keep those livable so people can stay in their homes.
And that one goes out to Neighbor works on the QA, so.
Yes,
it
they
has a little
help
more
administer.
flex. Hmm?
Yes, they help administer.
Yep. Does anybody have questions, or we had the additions. Have I gotten out of sequence?
No, you're good.
Okay.
We'll comment when we get to those pages, so you'll know kind of what's changed.
Okay. Document page 8, we have the general fund tax levy computations. Not a lot of movement to see there.
That is a page that hasn't changed because we referenced the non-property tax revenue line, and that is where that CDBG grant amount would sit at. So the first page in your packet is a replacement page for that.
And recently, the next page, general obligation bonds, the GO bonds, that one goes down substantially. That's document page 9. Unless I just crossed my eyes. I believe I did. We have some coupons going through pages 10. Just transfers you see on 11. And then we're down to a summary of resources, which is roughly where we started on the last budget. That'll be document page 12, PDF page 15.
And that is a replaced page as well due to the totaling.
Yeah. So it might be helpful as we turn these over. So you're on the second yellow page for the summary of resources. Any questions on that? Or we can move on to summary of expenditures, document page 13.
That is also a
It's
change.
modified. Next yellow page. Hearing none, we're into the general fund. Is there somebody presenting this one, or do we?
So we can definitely talk about revenues if there's anything that someone, wants to discuss. This first page of revenues is again a replaced page. It's a summary page.
So you've got summary of general fund resources. This section houses about 61 of the FTEs. So that FTE is what it takes to make a full-time employee. Not the same as belly buttons. That's how I remember it. We move on to General Fund 01. It is next yellow page and document page 16 in the PDF, but it's been replaced by the yellow. We have no questions on that. I'll take a pause because I tend to run through these a little fast. Nope, we're good. Alrighty, next page. Easy way to find it, it starts with court fines for the yellow one. So everybody's favorite thing, court fines and park fines at the top of that one, parking fines. No questions there. You can see mortgage rentals, that relates to the docks we were talking about earlier. Go on to the next one. That one starts with copies and lien search fees. In your PDF, it has been replaced by a yellow sheet. We have no questions there. Next yellow page is the summary of general fund expenditures, starting with city council at the top there on the listings. And I'm thinking these are the funds for conferences, trainings.
Yep. That sounds like a good segue for me.
Excellent.
So I'll start out with that. So basically it starts out on the printed page of 22, and it provides you the various line items and expenditures that's being proposed for this year. I'll only point out a couple of things, but I'm available for questions on all. You'll see that contractual, and that's line 2108, that is up from last year and considerably up from the 2 prior years. And you may be wondering what that's for. That's for the management of the Friday Update, the digital newsletter that goes out every week, management of our Facebook pages, our website, our agenda platform, our online meeting streaming, and etc.
Roger,
Yes.
what about library planning costs?
Yes, library planning costs are down there as we are, as the council continues to work towards finding a new library location and getting it approved. Those funds sitting in there now are earmarked for voter survey work that we hope to undertake, and then community education on the value and the need for a new library.
Roger, just a reminder, economic development, 2422, is that our obligation to SCDC?
It is.
Okay, thank you.
The reduction on the government channel?
We did not see a reduction in the government channel. We actually haven't spent any money on the government channel for a number of years. We were providing in-kind services. We allowed them to use one of our city-owned buildings at Edlund Park for their offices. And what might be out to the public now that they are going to cease to exist come end of June.
Yeah, for folks that might not know, the SCDC, that's the South Coast Development Council, focused on bringing in larger scale businesses, drawing investment into the area, which Roger frequently chairs. Okay, that takes us to the city manager's office.
And I'll do this one as well. I think there's really only one thing to really highlight as far as changes go, and that's training. We anticipate changes in our leadership in the city manager's office, so we anticipate additional training needs as we prepare for our staff for increased responsibilities and or new positions.
Roger, I see that 2001 meetings, travel, and membership have gone down. Do we feel like that's enough in that fund, given that we have an assistant city manager and a city manager?
I do, and that's because our world has changed since the COVID pandemic. Many of our conferences now can be attended online and meetings, so we have actually less travel costs.
Okay, thank you.
And for the public's reference, at different points, you'll see salaries that may seem low or different to you. Coos Bay uses time-based accounting, so when we look at how things are being budgeted, there's an estimation of how much time will be spent in different departments as well. So you'll see salaries that are part here, part there, based on historic trends and anticipations.
And we do provide a breakdown at the back of the budget on how those costs are allocated out across funds.
Next, we have Urban Renewal Administration.
And I get to take that one. So with, just as Drew has indicated, there's the change in salaries, which is just a difference in the allocations. And then the other thing I would just comment throughout this budget, you may see a change in PERS that doesn't align with the change in the salaries. And I would just reinforce that those PERS rates are going to be going up starting July 1st, and you won't see necessarily correspondence to an increase in salaries. It just doesn't run hand in hand like that. But the other thing that you'll see throughout, which you can see here, is our insurance rates for liability insurance are increasing, both from the insurance rate going up and then property valuations went up, and it's estimated about 23% increase. So this division is just intended to cover the costs of administration for the Urban Renewal Agency. The Urban Renewal Agency does not have its own staffing, so those tasks are handled by Coos Bay city staff members. These costs here are then passed on to the Urban Renewal Agency, shared between the downtown and the Empire District through an agency management fee. So that total $744,000 is repaid to the city through Urban Renewal.
That is PDF page 31 or document page 28. Do we have any questions on this section?
Nicole, item 2206, I'm just curious, postage was $150 last year, and we're looking at $1730 this year?
So typically that has been when we've had to do a mailing related to a plan amendment. And so not knowing where we stand just yet with where the library is, if we have some mailing to do there, we have capacity.
Great.
We likely won't need to use that.
Thank you.
A reminder for folks, if you hear us go with if you hear a 4-digit number, when you look at the GL code account number line, it's going to be the last 4 digits on that. So like if you secure 2003, that's your publications, and it's a much longer number, but it's easier just to read those 4 digits. Hearing no further questions, we can move on to Finance Department.
I'll take that. Good evening. The majority of our increase in salaries is additional personnel. We have a HR coordinator position in the finance department now.
With us taking in the dispatch from North Bend, are we seeing increasing in staffing HR finance, or it was a fairly small number of staff?
No.
Yes, not only did we take on the additional 5, or I think it's 5 dispatchers, we also brought in all of our new water quality employees.
Oh, I forgot, that's 20 or so?
It's fairly close to that, and unfortunately, our world in public employment's not getting less complicated, it's becoming more complicated. So it really behooves us to have a HR professional on staff.
Excellent.
Does the audit fees fall under finance, or are they spread across all the departments?
They're spread, yeah.
Alrighty.
I have a question on finance. Under contractual 2108, that's quite a bit different from the last year.
This current year, we had more anticipated temporary help budgeted.
Alrighty. Hearing no additional, we can go to city attorneys.
And that is mine. Overall, not much change there. The difference would be in salaries and PERS for the most part.
Okey-doke. And just a piece of information for folks, when you're looking at, not the proposed on the right, but you're looking at the actuals on the left, for 22-23, this most recent year, you'll notice that was the adopted.
Right.
We don't have actuals for that yet. So you'll sometimes see a substantial disparity in that line from the actuals of previous years, because we'll have budgeted high to be conservative, and then we'll be pleasantly surprised when it's lower. Do we have any questions on the city attorney?
Just a question in relationship to that, because we are towards the end of our fiscal year, you kind of have an idea when you're creating those numbers based on what's happened in this year. Even though that number is probably going to be smaller, you know that going into next year.
Yes, yeah, we look at trends for sure, and then if we know if there's something coming up in the future year that might be different, yeah.
Alrighty. That was document page 34. We're going to document page 35, or PDF page 38 if you're on the computer, and that is City Hall.
And that is mine. This is a division that's intended to cover the costs of operating City Hall, the fiscal building. Not much change there. We do have some increase in utilities. And the contractual line item, again, kind of basing those on where we stand currently. And then building grounds and maintenance is up. We do have a couple of issues with our HVAC system once in a while, and the front doors, some of you may have experienced. So just putting some funds in there to hopefully give us some capacity to deal with those issues throughout the year.
Always good to budget for maintenance. Definitely seen budgets that didn't have it. Always bites people in the back. Any questions on this one? Hearing none, we have community contributions. Those are going to be grant requests. Did we perhaps want to save this to the end to discuss after we've gone through all the others? Is that where we'll be considering the grants?
Correct. Actually, and I think what we have for you is that we went out and advertised for grants, received grants, and all of the grant requests are here, and there's capacity to award those grants.
Oh, all right. Does anybody have questions on this page?
I need to make a comment on this. For full disclosure, I'm an employee of the Boys and Girls Club, which receives funds from this. Do you want to explain how that's not a conflict of interest?
Yes. The city entered into an agreement with the Boys and Girls Club a number of years ago when we ceased activities in Parks and Recs, providing those services. In turn, we provided funding to the Boys and Girls Club to provide those services. Those are directly to provide those services and don't go to pay salaries of full-time employees. So we may have a perceived conflict, you do not have an actual conflict.
Roger?
Yes.
Excuse me, so that's why we don't have an application for the Boys and Girls, because it's an ongoing obligation?
It's an ongoing obligation. And truth be told, it hasn't adjusted with inflation. It's been the same for decades.
Roger, just to be clear, I think what I heard you say was, we will be funding all the recipients that applied for grants, or the submitted grants, correct?
We have, as staff, proposed that. You, as a budget committee, can either approve that or make changes.
Okay.
So just for clarifications, the ones that we see on the budget here, proposed budget, that have a 0 in the column, but something adopted last year did not apply for funds?
That's correct. So down at the bottom of page 38, you'll see the grant request that we received in the amounts.
Can I add one thing that I'm aware of, that Wash to Shore also applied for some community grant funds. However, they came in past the deadline. Their grant was for, their grant request was for $3,000. So I would propose that we add that, even though they did miss the grant deadline.
So I think you'll find, just before you begin discussing that we added, as we did last year at the request of the Budget Committee, $5,000 for discretionary contributions. You could, as a Budget Committee, choose to amend the budget, include Wash to Shore for the $3,000, and then I would suggest, if you do that, just reduce the discretionary contribution down to the $2,000, or you could leave it as is and we would know that your desire to fund Wash to Shore, and we could do that out of discretionary funds.
What's easier for you? Just let you fund it from the discretionary, leave the discretionary at 5,000?
I think that would be easy. We certainly understand and support the application. We just couldn't allow it to be too late, because then if you open the door, you can't stop it. Others from coming in.
A precedent, is that what that is, Roger?
So I would propose then.
Not a legal
that-
one.
Do you need a motion or just a consensus?
Well, I think since, if I may, since Councilor Stevens brought it up, are you okay if we go that route?
Absolutely.
Then I don't think you need a motion.
Okay. Do we have any questions on this page? This is a rarely low ask period.
We were shocked because we actually, staff did extra work in putting the notices out. And we thought we'd receive much more than this. And then we would have to come with some recommendations.
My eyes may be failing, but I don't see SAFE on here. They usually apply, don't they?
They did not.
Or the, what was it? Kids Hope Center. That was the one I was thinking of.
You're on
Oh,
there.
okay.
They had an increase actually over last year.
So really, there's no need to discuss this later, correct, since we're
Correct.
discussing this now?
Looks like we're good then. Yep, Kids Hope's there. Good, good. All right, no further questions. We can move on to non-departmental. That's PDF page 42 or document page 39.
Right, so this division is covering things that cannot be allocated necessarily to a specific other location. Kind of consider this kind of our internal services fund of sorts. Obviously, we have the changes in salaries, PERS, related kinds of things there. And insurance, this insurance across the general operations of the city sit here. That's a pretty significant increase. We already talked about that going up. I think that's pretty much the change.
All righty.
The item 2320, library building maintenance. I recall there were some issues with the air conditioning on the current library that were going to perhaps have to be addressed before the building is decommissioned. Will 20,000 handle that, or?
Not by itself, no. And there's several different funds that do library maintenance. Some of that will come from Fund 7, the actual library fund. Other funds, other capital cost could come from urban renewal. So it just depends. It's just a real dicey and difficult situation. How much do you invest into a failing building?
Yeah, I understand. That's one of the major challenges the city has in the next couple of years.
Yes.
Any further questions on this item? If not, we move on to other financing uses and expenditures, PDF page 44, document page 41.
And then I'd start with noting this is a page that has been changed due to the totals.
So that'll be a yellow page.
Yes. This page just basically services our debt and transfers. The majority of the debt that is shown here is water board debt, which is entirely passed through. The water board can't issue debt on its own. It goes to the individual cities to do that. So we have a revenue for that debt. They pay it or send us the money, and then we pay that debt.
And this is the second to last yellow page. The first two items on it are enterprise lease principal and enterprise lease interest.
And then we will discuss this a little bit in further detail, but probably the most obvious thing on this page is a transfer to the 911 tax fund of $1.3 million. That is just a reorganization of how things are recorded in our system. We are going to truly create a dispatch fund in Fund 10, which is the 911 tax fund, now that we're providing services to multiple entities. You'll see that when we get to that fund. We'll discuss that.
So that's another merging of funds to make it cleaner for the audits and just generally. Cool. Questions on that section, or we can move on to the police department? Sounds like police department. How goes it, Chief?
Good. Good evening, everyone. For those that don't know who I am, my name is Chris. I'm the police chief.
Do you have your mic on for the?
It's green, but let me speak into it. Is that a little bit better?
I just wanted to make sure
Okay.
it's good for everybody online.
If I wasn't heard online, my name is Chris. I'm the police chief, and I'm going to be presenting the police budget tonight. Basically, what I am presenting to you is a status quo budget. There's a couple things that I want to point out on the 240 account is what you'll be looking at. You may look at the salaries and wonder why the salary went down. I am actually fully staffed, and so you would think maybe it should have gone up. But if you remember, you may or may not know that we had several of our officers that were retiring, coming to the end of their careers, and that obviously causes a little extra expenses when we cash them out, basically their vacation and all the time that they have accrued. So you'll also see that the PERS, and we've discussed that already a couple times tonight, but the PERS cost has gone up. But overall, if you go through my budget on materials and services in the 240, it is a status quo budget. One other thing I'll point out that you may ask, or maybe you won't ask, but petroleum products, we did see an increase, and we continue to see an increase, and so we added an additional $10,000 in that line item to try to cover our petroleum costs.
I see, I know Cint is still active. Are we still providing in-kind? I know we don't have a financial aspect in here.
So Cint is still a little bit in the air in terms of their dedicated resources they have. We do provide assistance in the way of an investigator or an officer if needed, and that's how we are providing those in-kind expenses at this time, or resources, I should say.
Cool.
Chief.
And for folks, that's a South Coast Interagency Narcotics Team.
That is correct.
Item number 2445, nuisance abatement. Remind me, is that the towing of vehicles?
Yes, and we did notice that that line item did get used quite a bit last year, and we actually exceeded what we had planned for, so we did add an additional $5,000 in that line item as well.
Okay, thank you.
It is possible through some proposed legislation on the state level that there may be a new funding source for that. I believe the state legislature is proposing an increase or a new, either a vehicle registration fee or a driver's license fee, and those funds will be set aside, which will pay for the towing and dismantling of abandoned recreational vehicles.
Yes. Any questions on the 240?
I have a question.
Yeah.
Can you just explain what the police grants are?
I'm sorry?
The police grants.
Yes, so we apply for a number of police grants, generally through Oregon Impact, and it's our traffic safety grants, our DUI enforcement, a 3 flags seatbelt, and distracted driving. And so we don't know exactly what we're going to receive, so we put that as an earmark for when we start receiving those grants. And then our officers will go out on overtime for those various enforcement operations, and then we're refunded through Oregon Impact and ODOT.
So Chief, we have one resource officer, and that's in the salaries, I presume. Am I correct?
That is correct.
And we've talked about having another resource officer, and I think there's some availability possibly for grants, or isn't there? And where would that be located in here? Like, do we do a matching grant? Do you have that budgeted somewhere if that happens, or how's that work?
I may have to defer to Melissa on how we would do that. If we are actively looking out for grants and available grants out there that would fund that additional position, and I'm not sure, I think we may have to just bring that back to you guys if we did secure a grant.
That's correct. We would bring that back through an amended budget process.
Okay. So are we looking for, of course, I'm going to push one resource officer extra or another one, or just one hopefully, or two possibly?
Well, I mean, we obviously, we have one now. I would say that there's enough work for an additional resource officer. So if we could find funding for a second, that would be ideal.
Okay.
Yeah.
There's no possible funding at the legislative body to help with this at this point?
I haven't seen anything yet.
Okay. All right, thanks.
Chief, is it wise to fund a position through a grant? Because when the grant funds run out, then where are you going to be?
Well, and you're right. That is a concern. A lot of the grants will run maybe a 3-year period, and then there's obviously some obligations to the city, sometimes during those 3 years, and then for sure after those 3 years, and sometimes it's a total of a 5-year, contract. And so we have to be careful on what types of grants we would secure.
When will we know about that grant, Chief?
What was that?
When will we know if we received that, or when we received that grant?
I don't know of a grant right now to even apply for.
Oh, we
and so
haven't
we're
applied
looking
for it,
at
okay.
what may come available. I don't know of any grants right now that will pay for salary. There's some grants out there that are talking about paying for materials and services, but I haven't seen anything that will actually cover salaries.
Thank you.
Do you have an idea of what the resource officer that we currently have cost associated with?
You know, we obviously, they would be a sworn police officer, and so we actually have, they would be a member of the union as well, and so we have a step pay. And I would say on an average, an entry-level officer is going to, once you put their benefit package all in, it's going to roughly run around $120,000 to $130,000 a year. Any other questions? Okay, one of the things, Councilor Farmer, if I can move on to the next one. Okay. One of the things that I think will probably be the biggest change, and Nicole just touched on it a little bit with our budget. Historically, we've always bounced between two different funds to fund the 911 Communications Center. And that was in the area of 242, which is the very next GL account that you guys are looking at. And we would pay for a portion of our full-time employees, our FTEs, out of the 242, which is out of the general fund. And then the other portion of that center would be funded through the Fund 10, which I'll get into here in just a second. And so as we started to expand this dispatch center, we took on 3 additional employees, which took us up from 10 FTEs to 13 FTEs. We started looking at how do we best kind of show the overall expenditures of that center and the revenues that are receiving from the service contracts and the 911 tax dollars that we receive from all the, not only Coos Bay, but also the entities that we dispatch for. And so as we started talking about that and looking at it, it became obvious that I think the best way to approach this would be to make a general fund contribution to the Fund 10 and basically close out the 242. And that, when we go into the Fund 10 here in just a second, you will see that I don't have it open right now, but 1.2 something contribution to Fund 10. And so Fund 242, obviously it shows the 2 previous years, and I think we have to carry that for a few years just under the budget laws and requirements, but eventually you won't see that anymore and it'll be all into Fund 10. And I think it's going to make a lot better sense moving forward, and it'll be easier to understand, and we won't be pulling some employees out of Fund 10 and some employees out of 242, and it'll paint a more clear picture. So if you guys are ready for that, I'll move you into Fund 10. And I'm not sure, let me see if I can tell you what page that's going to be on for you. It is going to be on, the 911 fund tax starts on page 100 of your...
102 it sounds like.
Yeah, okay, 102. And so, again, it is, for the most part, a status quo budget. Now, all the numbers are put into one fund, which is going to change the overall look. But if you start up at the top, you can see the 911 dollars that we receive from Coos Bay, City of Coke Hill, North Bend, and those are our, in our 911 contracts. The 911, sorry, you're not seeing that. That's, yes, and the 911 contracts, that's our service contracts that we have with the various cities and agencies that we provide dispatch services for. And then you will see the contribution from the general fund of the 1.270, 157.
You have an old one.
Oh, do I have an old one? I'm sorry.
Yeah, it's 1,319,969.
Sorry, yeah. In the last four ending in 1,000. And then we just move into the salaries, and that is for all of the full-time employees, all of the 911 dispatchers. And then we move into the materials and services.
The expenditures on the salaries, that's all because of North Bend coming in? That's a substantial jump.
No, it's because we're moving over the expenditures that were in
Okay.
240 or 242 and moving them over to here.
Gotcha.
Yeah, that's all of it combined now. That's why it's going to look a little bit different.
He tried to warn us before we were shocked.
Yeah.
You can only do so much for me.
I'll point out training is increased, but again, that's both funds combined, and it's also to allow for the additional dispatchers that we have now in the center, and maintaining certifications and training and whatnot that's required to be a dispatcher.
Chief, is the dispatch center fully staffed right now?
We are fully staffed. We are actually fully staffed with the anticipation of one of them retiring. So we're actually at 14 full-time employees right now, which has been really nice.
Yeah, congrats on a full staff.
Yeah,
Both departments.
fully staffed, and they're all fully trained and actually functioning as solo dispatchers. So it's
That's good to hear.
really good. Yeah, yeah.
Do
Yeah,
we
not
still
good.
have the dispatcher that's the trainer for the academy? I forgot her
Yeah.
name.
Tia.
Probably Tia is who you're referring to. No, Tia has since retired now.
Oh, okay, I thought she might be.
She retired, and then she came back on contract for a little bit, and then she's actually retired.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
I hear it takes 2 or 3 tries, Roger.
I didn't hear anything.
Just saying.
Yes, sir.
Could, a little more explanation on, I see the resources, Coos Bay, Coquille, North Bend, and then the contract, which is the substantial portion of it.
Yeah.
Who are those contracts with in general?
So the one portion is the 911 tax dollars that we receive, and that's what you're seeing. And then the contract is for those agencies that we provide the dispatch services as well. So that's the City of North Bend, that is the City of Coquille, Coquille Fire and Ambulance, and the both tribes as well. We provide services to.
So another way to further explain that, the 911 dollars are actually passed through from the state, and that's generated and paid by every phone user. 75, well, it was 75 cents. I think it's different now. Yeah, a little bit more now. Well, back in the day, it was 75 cents.
I wasn't going to say that.
And then that's parsed out. Part of it's kept by Oregon Emergency Management, and they take responsibility for upgrading equipment in each 911 center, so they're all exactly the same. And then they send a portion of that to help defray the cost. Doesn't pay for everything, but defrays the cost. Then the rest of the dispatching fees are paid for by the separate entities that we provide services to.
Chief, what are the, sorry, go ahead.
So like the city of Coos Bay 911 would be the state funds that are coming in for Coos Bay,
Yes.
and then the contract funds, which are between North Bend and Coos Bay, let's say, are covered in the, poor eyesight here, 2,300.
Yes, in the 911 contracts, yes.
Thank you for the clarification.
You referred to when they call in, are those, the cell phones included in that?
They are.
Yes. There wasn't for
One time
a
there
great
was.
period of time, and now it does also include cell phones, yes.
Okay, thanks.
And when you say both tribes, Chief, what are the names of those tribes?
The Coquille Indian tribe and the Confederated tribes.
Great, thanks.
Sorry.
All righty. Any further questions on this section? How are we doing?
Looking good.
We're nearing 2 hours in. Does anybody need a break, or we keep running? I hear muttered no's.
Thank you.
We're going back to where we were.
Yeah, I believe we were headed into the fire department next.
Correct.
PDF
And that is
page.
PDF page 52 and document page 49.
Good evening. I'm Jeff Adkins, Battalion Chief with the Fire Department. You have the Fire Department's proposed budget for the fiscal year. You'll notice a slight increase in several line items. This represents approximately a 4% overall increase to the budget. A few notes we want to make is line item 2108, contractual. The council adopted 2022-23 year was $77,000. That is down to $41,000. That reflects a change from last year where we received a staffing grant through a state fire marshal's office. We've applied for that again this year, but we've not received that. The other one is 2311, fire grants equipment, and that's similar. We received a grant, so mid-year there was a supplemental budget adjustment which reflects that number.
And you've applied for that again?
Which one?
You've applied for a grant for that, so there's possibly something coming in or
For
not?
2311.
Yeah, for 2311 we apply for several grants. Over the last 3 years we've applied for and received over $800,000 in grants through the fire department. So we do apply for them, it's just whether we're approved or not.
And I would share that Fire Chief Anderson's not here tonight because he's attending a budget meeting for one of our contract districts. We provide services to 3 contract districts, Bunker Hill, Libby, and Timber Park. Though we're also there because we're asking for additional funds to help supplement our costs for a new fire engine.
That's my question. So where is that fire engine referenced in here?
It's not. It'll be in the capital fund portion.
Okay.
Fund 27.
The other thing that I know that we're in labor negotiations, and so how is that going to be referenced? I know it's going to be more than it was, whatever that may be.
It may be.
So it probably will be. But the point is, so where is that going to be offset in this budget?
So we have already budgeted within here an anticipated 3% increase.
Okay.
Should it be different, and depending on when that closes, we may have to come back with a supplemental budget to you.
Okay. But the 3%'s in there, so
That
at
is
least
correct.
at this point, good. We got some of it covered. Thanks.
Does the city have a grant writer, or all the departments do their own grant writing?
Yes and no. We have used grant writing services in the past. We recently used grant writing services through CCD, and this budget also contains funding for a grant writer specific to the parks.
To the parks.
Correct. It's been identified as a major need, and getting a consistent grant writer to work on parks-related projects is going to be important. But As for the fire department is very successful in their grant writing, and they do it in-house.
All righty, any further questions for fire? All righty, if not,
We're gonna do, also Fund 27, which is the, Fire Equipment Reserve Fund.
What page is that on?
We'll get there.
it'll be 115 on your PDF or 112 on your document.
Just, at least you're here and not having it view online. That's a little challenging.
Do you want to take that? You got it.
If you want to, that'd be great. I didn't cover that too much.
So on the, when I get to it here, just use your page real quick. On the Fire Equipment Reserve Fund, a portion of the funds that are derived from our contract districts are dedicated to the replacement of equipment. Those dedicated funds are set in a separate fund and they roll over when they're not used. Generally, we let them build up to the point where we need to use them to go ahead and purchase some equipment. This assures those contract districts that they're contributing and those funds are being used as they're intended. You will see in there that we have where the funds come in and that we have transferred in $100,000 through this one, and that is towards the purchase of that fire engine. And then you'll also see a vehicle outlay. The council recently approved the purchase of a new fire engine. It's to replace the 1994.
1990, yeah.
Yeah, we do keep them around for a while. The 1994 engine, it will probably take up to 30 months before that vehicle is available and can be put into use.
Roger, just as a reminder, that transfer from the general fund, those dollars come from the timber harvest, is that right, cut on the water board? Do I have that completely off?
So this 100,000 is not from that.
Okay.
We are using some of our ARPA dollars towards this because our timber harvest is going to be delayed. And we wanted to be able to get that fire engine ordered because there's a cost savings to do that. So we're kind of helping to supplement while we're waiting for the timber harvest. It's very possible we might almost double up harvest depending on how they land. So we might, have a larger sum all at the same time. We're not expecting it until 2024 though, so.
Okay, and that harvest is every other year, correct?
Mm-hmm.
Ideally.
It's what it should be, yes,
Correct.
ideally.
And just for further explanation, we own 800 acres of timberlands up on the water board, and through an agreement with the water board, we try to switch off every year. They also have 800 acres, and we do a sustained yield timber harvest, and those funds are generally goes towards capital costs such as purchasing of vehicles like a fire engine or police cars or other related city equipment.
So Roger, you say the vehicle outlay is $375 for the fire truck. Isn't it more than that?
It is, but we don't anticipate the other expenditure coming in until the following budget year, and I believe we're spending budget dollars this year on that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, this is intended to cover that down payment requirement when we order, and then we'll have the timber dollars in time to pay it off.
For the next budget, we'll have dollars
Yeah.
that'll be
Right.
allocated
Yeah.
towards that. And here I see the fire protection, Bunker Hill Timber Park and Libby rural area. How are those proportionally determined, how much they pay? By size or?
No, it's an excellent question. It's on assessed value. So I believe it's based on $2 per assessed value, which is proportionally the same as our citizens pay for fire service.
Okay, thanks.
And this is just 10% by agreement with those districts. We put 10% of those dollars in here. The rest of them sit in the general fund, which cover the costs of the fire department.
27. Otherwise, we'll hop back up, I believe, to PDF page 55.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
And we were at Public Works and Community Development, I believe.
Yes, thank you.
PDF page 56 and document page 53.
I'm Jim Hossley, the Public Works and Community Development Director, and the department has 7 divisions, including the Planning Division, Engineering Division, Parks Division, Codes Enforcement, Transportation and Facilities, Water Quality, and Building Codes. And Jennifer, our Deputy Director, and myself will tag team on these budgets. And I'll start first with the planning in 301, 01301. So personnel services, you can see the salaries, we have an increase there. That's pretty significant, and that's the addition of an employee. So we have 3 planners now. And you'll see that reflected in 2005 line item for training. That's just to get these new employees up to speed. And you'll see that contractual 2108, a slight decrease in that is proposed this fiscal year. Those dollars are for doing code updates and some changes to the Coos Bay Estuary Management Plan and UGB discussions, and help from the consultants on those.
So you said Coos Bay Estuary Plan, that's the one we're doing for county?
That's right.
So are we participating in the county in that?
No, this is, if we have to devote some consulting time to that, we'll have the dollars available.
All righty, if we got no questions there, I think we move into engineering.
Okay, I'll take that one. Hello, everyone. This is pretty status quo from last year. The one thing that you may notice is the telephone budget went up, and we're using our telephones more for surveying and GPS collection. So that's why that budget increased.
But this doesn't cover, this doesn't cover all the engineering that we deal with. I mean, there's a wide variety of engineers that we utilize in many ways, correct?
That's correct. This is mostly administration. The other funds, Fund 3 and Fund 29, also absorb engineering.
So those come out of another fund then?
Correct.
Okay, thanks.
All righty. Questions on the engineering section? Checking online because I feel like I might be running over Sarah, but she usually lets me know. No. Okay. Next is Parks Division.
Okay, I'll take that one as well. There's a couple things to note. The contractual, you'll see, went up. Roger mentioned this. We have dedicated $50,000 to a grant writer for specifically the parks asset. And so we have advertised a request for qualifications, and we're going to be ready to award that should this get approved here in July. Another thing that went up was the litter patrol, and we're just seeing increased costs in that area.
So the contractual, is it for one specific area? I know that we increased it, are for all the parks, or how's that being decided?
Well, there's several things that can come up throughout the course of the year.
For the contractual 2108?
Yes.
It can be for parks design work, for small
park
projects.
Design, not park maintenance?
That's right.
Yeah.
I didn't know if we had talked about park maintenance at one time, contracting it out, because I know we're kind of shorthanded on this.
Right, we use temporary employees for that.
Okay.
And we've been able to find good temps.
All right.
And the boat ramps, there's a significant decrease in maintenance for that. Is that because they don't need as much maintenance?
No, they still need maintenance, but the reason why you saw increased costs last year is because it was devoted to a specific project.
Okay. Thank you.
Yeah, I'll take that one if there's any questions.
And I would also add, this is your last yellow sheet, and it is only for the total at the bottom.
Okay. Last page of the yellow sheets starts with GL code ending in 1001. That's moved in from public safety. That's why you don't see any historic actuals. If there are no questions on that, we can roll into the state gas tax fund.
Okay. So looking at this one, going down to materials and service, some significant things to note is the streetlights. That project went down. That's because we did the LED project last year. And then going to the next page.
Can you say that one more time?
Sure. We implemented LED lights in our downtown corridor, and as a result, this is the cost savings.
Wonderful, thank you.
Actually, that was across the city.
Across the city, thank you.
And it gave us back control of the streetlights and an actual count of how many there are, yeah?
Yes.
Very good.
Jennifer, 4001, the Amoresco lighting project payment. Is that, are we experiencing that kind of savings? Is the savings covering the debt service on that? Do you know?
Nicole, do you want to jump in here?
Sure. So if we look at the current, go back up to streetlights, we're in this year 190. We're expecting in this next fiscal year to have streetlights at 110, so it's about $80,000 that should cover that, debt service payment. I think I want to say it's 11 years, actually, yeah.
Any questions there? Additional questions, I should say. Otherwise, we're rolling into water quality division.
Okay.
Very nice way of saying wastewater, if I recall correctly.
Before we move on, I'd like to ask about the streetscapes maintenance, line item 2310. That went down $20,000. Is that just because we weren't using that money?
Could you give the GL code again?
2310 on page 72.
2310.
So based on the projections, that's what we estimated for this coming fiscal year.
Okay.
So I would share that we are doing some streetscape maintenance out of Fund 5.
Fund 5, okay.
And that is the hotel motel tax.
Oh, great.
The concrete, asphalt, and gravel went down quite a bit as well.
And that's somewhat along the same lines as we're using different funds for that.
I think that's this is an excellent opportunity to share that there are multiple funds that are used for streets. Gas tax is a revenue-specific source that comes through our portion, or the revenue sharing from the state on the state gas tax. But we also use TUF funds, transportation utility fees, urban renewal, special levy funds, jurisdictional exchange funds, and I feel like I'm missing something.
SGP.
Oh, STP?
Something.
Surface Transportation Funds.
Yeah.
So it's actually spread out amongst a number of funds. So this one's just specific for that asphalt and concrete and gravel fund. So it's somewhat limited. It'd be nice to have it all in one fund, but there's just too many different revenue sources.
So overall, do you see a decrease in funds available for maintenance of streets?
No. Increased.
Well, you mean the gas fund, state gas fund.
Right.
But the other fund, then.
Right, that's why I'm asking about the overall.
No, they've actually increased over the years.
Roger, I don't mean to put you on the spot, but do you know in 2024 how much we plan to spend on road maintenance, Roger and Nicole, in totality?
Yeah, actually, I think it's just a hair over 3.5 million.
So we will spend 3.5 million improving 167 miles of road.
Yes, and I will clarify that that's out of city funds. There are some additional urban renewal funds that's spent.
Great, thank you.
For a quick bit of context on that, I believe when many of us came on in 2016, the roads budget was $70,000.
That is correct.
And an estimate was out there that to maintain the roads in the condition they were in 2016 was $750,000 a year. So we're still playing catch up, but we've got a lot more money than we did at the time to address the roads.
Jim, did you hear that online?
Sorry, I'm turning myself and probably messing up the mic.
I had a question on a projection since we're on the roads. Is just like you do a payback and a future rollout, since you've already done surveys over, I think, several decades, they did surveys on the street maintenance conditions. And is there a projection for when a catch-up would be? I understand costs keep escalating on all sides for materials and labor, but is there any end in sight on just keeping sinkholes and
There's
stuff
probably
from
not an
coming
end
up?
in sight, but at the time that the transportation utility fee was implemented, we estimated between 35 to 50 years to get us up. And typically our roads last about 20 years. That's the typical lifespan of a road. So we should expect to have to come back in 20 years. We've had our contractors do a good job, and we've actually got longer life out of most of our roads. So we can hope that that happens.
But it's not 30, you don't expect it to be 30 to 50 years now. I mean, it's got down considerably since we've increased it.
Well, I think we're closer to 30 than 50.
Coco, I appreciate the question, and Jim gets this question, I don't know how many times a year, so, and the number never changes, so well done you.
Well, I think that's the number one question that you hear from people is the roads, the roads. Some people still have dirt roads, and said when I was doing the census during COVID, that was one of the complaints was they've been asking us this since I was in high school, and I'm 60 years now, and they still haven't paved this road. I was just curious. Thank you.
Jim, if I remember correctly, when we were discussing the transportation utility fee, you said it would cost $1 million per lane mile to repair the roads, correct?
That's correct. That would be a reconstruction.
Which we hope to eliminate if we can stay on top of the maintenance. Well, we can have another discussion on roads alone.
All righty. Does anybody have any esoteric depth about roads they would like to go into, or we can save that for another time? Otherwise, I believe we were going into water quality division.
Okay, so just to remind everybody, the city took back operations and maintenance in-house July 6, 2021. So this next fiscal year will be the third year that we've managed that in-house. And so we're gaining more information and more knowledge about our system as far as the cost goes, and I think it's going to be reflective in this budget. So you guys won't see as many maybe inconsistencies between the previous year.
Jennifer, I'm sorry, just one question.
Sure.
And since we've done that, we've had absolutely no fines. Is that correct?
We've had no fines. In fact, Plant 2, our new Plant 2, if some of you remember, we had a little bit of a bumpy startup underneath our contract operator. And we have, let's see, today is 610 days we have met permit.
That's wonderful. Thank you.
Well, I believe we cut chemical usage by 2/3. I know chemical usage went way down.
We have, but those darn costs keep going up.
Oh, yeah.
Y'all are doing a great job.
Thank you.
Good to hear.
Okay, so just underneath resources, something to note, this year staff is recommending a 6.5% increase for sewer user fees. And we've worked with our financial consultant for that recommendation. So then going to administration, if there's no questions there, can I go to administration?
Of course.
This is just pretty status quo. If you have any questions, I can take them. Okay. Oh.
Yes, I had a question. Is there any plan in the future to meter waste from larger you know, a lot of cities have utilities where they not only meter electrical and water for potable water, but they
Mhm.
also meter.
So we have a rate structure, and, you know, we have a residential structure, and then we have high-strength users. And I don't know if we have the industry here really that warrants that,
Okay.
but so I don't believe there's any plans.
Okay, so if there's any heavy industry, none of them use
Yeah.
that.
So some cities have what they call significant users, and that puts them in a different bracket with DEQ. We don't have any of those users here in the city of Coos Bay.
Okay, thank you.
Uh-huh. Okay. Okay, then moving down to 351, which is Plant 1. So a couple things to note here. You're going to see in Fund 2004, which is permits, licenses, and fees. That went up pretty significantly. So every year we have to pay to pay DEQ for our permit. They call that an MPDES permit. That's issued new every 5 years per their schedule. And this last permit cycle, they have all this additional testing above and beyond the monthly normal testing that we do. And that additional testing is becoming quite costly. And so last year we did it for Plant 2, it cost $18,000. So we reflected that and this next year we have to do it for Plant 1. So we increased that line item by $20,000. So that's why you see that increase there. Going down to contractual, which is 2108. City Council implemented a FOG program, which is fats, oil, and grease, and it's a fog reduction program. It's a common problem in our sanitary sewers, and with that, they implemented a pre-treatment reimbursement program for food service establishments that do not have pre-treatment devices installed. Believe it or not, there was quite a few. And so this so far, I think we have reimbursed 6 food service establishments, but it's starting really to ramp up. And so that increased contractual cost, you'll see it in Plant 1 and Plant 2, and it's about $130,000 for each plant. But once we do that, we're going to have reduced maintenance and even reduced treatment costs. And so we're going to realize those costs back.
Do you have a time frame when you think how long it will take to implement this?
Staff is proposing just this 1 year. Yeah, we got the program off the ground next year. We got people out there. We got them thinking about it. But I know you hear this all the time, but there's only so many plumbers and lead times, and yeah.
So that's what I said. I didn't know if this year we covered, or we expect next year to be still continuing on.
Yeah, this year so far we've implemented about 6 or 7, but we have several. We have many in the works actually. Okay.
And Jennifer, remind us the value of that. Ultimately, that's a value to the system itself and the pipes and...
Yep, it reduces maintenance, wear and tear on the system as far as the conveyance system, as well as the pump stations and the treatment plants.
Thank you.
Well, and not only that, but you also have a reduction in the cost when you do have a clog takes a significant amount of time, staff time, and then clearing that as well.
Correct. And we could be facing fines from DEQ.
And from pipe health, if I remember right, the chemicals can reach something like hydrochloric acid level of acidity, and that's just not good on our infrastructure.
No, it's not. Okay.
Cool.
Along that line, I was wondering, is there a potential pool of what you think the capacity would be for that program?
An intentional, excuse me, what?
The capacity of people that could be using that program. Let's say if there was enough plumbers or people to help them implement it, what would that be?
Based on the surveys we got back, it's approximately 50 food service establishments.
Okay, thank you.
So we're chipping away at it.
Yes, absolutely. Okay, so moving down. So when you go down to the bottom of materials and services on page 80, you'll see that increase from last year. And like we said, it's due to the FOG program. It's due to the additional testing. And then included in contractual also is some increased costs with the lab consultant based on that testing. Any questions on that one?
It looks like you added this year emergency repairs that wasn't there before.
Thank you. That also contributes. Appreciate that. And that's just to better track those unplanned emergencies.
Okay, if we're good there, expenditures is PDF page 84, document page 81.
Okay, so plant 2. Contractual, we talked about that. That's due to the FOG program. We added the emergency repairs line item. So then going down, one thing that I did not note in plant 1, and we did the same thing in plant 2, is we lumped kind of everything into what we called water quality operations, which is Fund 2414. And what we did is we separated that out this year to separate lab costs as well as water quality operations. And that's just to be a little more transparent with our special districts and also to track those costs, because there is an expense running our own lab in-house.
So Jennifer, when you say for special districts, is that because we provide contractual services to 2 special districts?
That is correct.
And
Thank
that's
you.
why there's 2 different funds. We have to account for the amount of money we spend at Plant 2 because Charleston Sanitary District pays approximately 24 to 25% of the operations of that plant. And then Plant 1, I believe it's Bunker Hill Sanitary District pays 5, correct?
Any questions?
Collections and sanitary, I
Okay.
think.
So going down to collections and sanitary, something we're doing now that we're getting a little more experience with this budget is we realized we had some extra line items. So I'm going to draw your attention to 2303, which is automotive equipment parts and repair, 2317, which is equipment parts and maintenance, and there's one more. Oh, sorry, 2308, which is automotive parts. If you notice, 2308 and 2317 have a 0 amount there because we'd like to close those out and combine them with 2303. And we did increase the budget for system repairs because we're doing more work in-house, and there's a cost savings there as well, rather than contracting it out. We've got the crew, we've got them trained, and they're experienced.
That's cool.
Any questions?
Collections and stormwater.
Okay, so
Still
same,
got cedar boxes around?
I'm sorry?
Still got cedar stormwater boxes hanging around?
Not that I know of.
Oh.
Okay. Same thing, the 2303, we're just utilizing that line item and getting rid of those other 2 line items, 2308 and 2317. And again, we increased the system repairs. Any questions?
Yeah, I have a question on the collections sanitary 353, you have 40,000 for a vehicle. And on Fund 03, you also have 40,000 for a vehicle. Is that one vehicle?
It's one vehicle,
Split
and
between the 2 funding sources?
it's actually, it's split between the Water Quality Fund and Fund 2. We're going to buy a dump truck. So our transportation and facilities and our water quality crew, they both need a dump truck. Right now, we have one that is, is it 30 years old? And it's just, it needs to be replaced. And so we're going to utilize those 2 funds to purchase a dump truck.
Rob got to ride in the fire truck, so do one of us get to fight to ride in the dump truck?
We can arrange that. We can arrange that.
I think the front or the back.
All righty. Questions, comments, concerns, or we roll on? I think hotel motel is next.
Looks good.
I can,
Thank you, Jennifer.
I will take that one. Hotel motel fund is its separate fund because it has a separate resource where those funds come from. The city has a short-term vacation or lodging tax of 9.5%. Those funds are used primarily to, in one part, to pay for promotions through a contract that we have with the Coos Bay, North Bend, Charleston Visitors Convention Bureau. We'll just go VCB for short on that. In addition, we contract with the VCB to operate the Coos Bay Visitor Information Center, or otherwise we refer to that as the VIC. So please forgive me when we start saying VCB and VIC, but they are combined. The remainder amount of the money is used in part for tourism-related activities or the maintenance of tourism-related facilities, which is pretty, it's a wide number of buildings. It could be the Egyptian Theater, the Art Museum, the Railroad Museum, the Sun Museum. There's a number of different things. We also use those funds for festival support or special events.
Roger, can I just clarify? So what I think I understand is that the city receives $1.3 million in money that we can use in certain ways, and that money comes directly from the visitor through their visitation through a lodging tax at either a hotel or an RV park or a vacation rental. Is that correct?
That is correct.
Great, thank you.
Questions on it?
Could the Egyptian Theater apply for one of the grants? Could the Egyptian Theater have applied for one of the grants that were offered?
It could, although the Egyptian Theater gets support from the city currently. The city owns that facility.
Right, I saw that.
The city pays for the liability insurance on that facility, and we also pay for various maintenance projects and sometimes capital improvement projects on that facility. But yes, they could have.
We got nothing. I think the library comes next.
I got one question. I see community events went down $10,000.
2204, Roger.
Oh, yeah,
Thank you.
sorry. I should have said that. Thank you.
My pleasure.
Yes, and I think that's based on the fact that this budget is, this fund is a little strained, so we've just reduced it a little bit.
Okay, that makes sense.
So and I guess I should share that on, part of that strain is 2429, excuse me, 2433 special projects. We've included, as I mentioned earlier, curb appeal in the downtown, so that includes doing some landscaping around the visitor center. It also includes flower baskets, Christmas lights, and also parking lot maintenance. Our visitors do use our parking lots in the downtown, and I believe we have, last I checked, 13 or 14 downtown parking lots, all of which need maintenance, and so we're going to be using a schedule. Every year we're going to undertake 1 or 2 parking lots to do maintenance in, seal coating, restriping, so that we have scheduled to do them all.
I think what I love most about this tax is, quite honestly, not only benefits the visitor, but really it benefits the local resident for all the revenues that are generated from that tax.
Correct. I agree.
I think it's Sammy time.
Move this closer. Good evening. I'm here to do the library budget, and just as a quick review, the money for the library comes from the library taxing district, which is divided up amongst the 8 public libraries in the county. And also that this budget has been reviewed and received approval from the library board already. They have reviewed it thoroughly. We have increased things, sort of general increases due to the fact that nothing is less expensive anymore. One of our larger ones is for our contractual, which is 2108. And that is, we have a community engagement person that has been funded in the past by grant funds. And we have found that we cannot do without that position anymore. So North Bend and Coos Bay are, have budgeted in case our grant funding that we are looking for does not come through. We just have put in that safety net so that we don't lose that valuable resource.
Sammy,
Is that Tammy Alley?
It is, yes.
Sammy, could you explain a little bit on what services she provides for the
Sure,
community?
yes. pretty much anything, almost. She helps people navigate the various systems of filling out applications, anything to, to get food, housing. She helps with job applications, getting cell phones, getting the cell phones to work once you actually get the cell phone, and those kind of things.
Thank you.
I believe she's a clinical social worker too, isn't she? I think she's an LCSW.
Master's degree. Yeah, I believe so. She is supervised under another clinical person.
But strong background in mental health.
Yes.
basically.
Oh, very strong. Yes.
With the population that generally comes to needing assistance.
Yes. And we, as you can see, also we do also continue to maintain our furniture restricted fund. We put into that every year, knowing that we still have some of the original furniture from when the 1960 building was built, and it's not surviving anymore. So we have built up a savings fund for when those chairs go completely to the wayside. Any questions from anyone?
In our lull, I would just like to remind everyone to speak into their microphone so that the folks online can hear us.
All right, we're on PDF page 98. It is 8:20 and some folks have milled about. Do we need a break or do we want to keep pushing through? I think we hit change of funds at page 130, and that was around when we were wrapping up last time. Yeah.
May we have a 5-minute break?
5-minute break it is.
Thank you.
Be back at 8:26.
So that means that you're both telling someone that you can't hear us.
Yes, I got an ask for people to speak into the microphones, and that's fair. We are done with this.
Thanks for the 5-minute break.
Yeah.
It's like being brave enough. I was like, I kind of want to say it, and then you said it.
Gotta do it. Gotta do it.
Oh, my God, no, I will. All right.
Yeah, well, this year we'll be exceeding that. Hopefully, we're going to make changes that year in regards to response models. We still most of our responses are short, but we only get 6 or 8 miles to the gallon. Most everything is short trips. So we have higher maintenance. Yeah, unfortunately. That's what they're kind of designed to do. It's the wear and tear. Yeah.
Several times. We're getting more prepared in order to sleep. Working on getting working on getting every 10
Staff members really help. You also do shellfish stuff. That would probably be good. Peanuts or something like that.
Yeah, peanuts.
So it does nothing?
It is.
I was just gonna let you guys know how to have Sammy do, or. I was worried about that, yeah, that's fine. Well, it's part of our heritage, yeah.
I guess.
It's just easier, so you're here. It's fine with me, yep, whatever.
It's like, why didn't they?
You gonna do Fund 14?
Yep. Stacy better bring me back a souvenir. Okay. Still on vacation.
Really?
Yeah.
So Sammy, I think we're continuing with you.
Yes, I'm here to do Fund 14 also, which is, yes, I believe it's page 108, am I right?
108.
And this is the Coos County Library Service District,
PDF 114.
yeah, Extended Service Office. This is, the City of Coos Bay acts as their fiscal agent. What they are is the office that takes care of sort of the umbrella services for the library district, things like the van that drives around every day with all the books, and the shared services such as databases and some electronic resources. So that's what this budget covers. This budget also has been reviewed by the Coos Library Board and by the County Budget Committee before it came to you all. It basically stays status quo from last time. Does anybody have any questions about it?
And this budget was also reviewed by the county commissioners.
Yes, yes, it was done by the county budget committee about 3 weeks ago. It has gone down a little. Stacy Nix, who runs the office, has an incredibly sharp pencil and is very good about being very precise and keeping within her spending. And
Even with transportation and countywide services, wow.
Mhm.
Questions, comments, concerns, or keep rolling? Awesome.
All right, thank you.
Oh, questions?
Throughout the budget, people have been asking for increases in
Mhm.
utility.
Correct. What part of that is they bought a new, much more fuel-efficient vehicle than they've had in the past, and that has really helped keep the cost of that down.
And then my next question is the library books and records went down significantly.
What this office does is it is using more of the other 8 libraries' collections rather than purchasing a duplicate copy of something that someone already has. So instead, she has funneled that money, many of the physical objects, into electronic stuff that the whole county can use. Mhm.
Awesome. Anything else, or we keep rolling into building code? Or did I get off course again?
You're on course.
I'll take
Okay.
the building codes.
I don't want to do building codes, so
And
thank you.
going back, that's PDF 98, but you've got water features, or physical page 95.
And going to page 97, building codes is a enterprise fund. It's financed through permit fees, and you can see that on page 97. And this is our forecast, shows our forecast revenues for this coming fiscal year.
Alrighty, lots of permit stuff. Lots of stuff depending on people doing more business. Do we see anything that we have questions about, comments, concerns?
Jim, if the housing development over by Cascade, I can't remember what they call it now, but if that starts happening this year, this would change significantly, wouldn't it?
Yes, it would. We would see a dramatic increase in revenue.
Is that still called Timber Cove, or did they?
Yeah, it's,
Okay.
to my knowledge, it's still Timber Cove.
Okay. It's changed a few times, so.
We only bring $150,000 in building permits in a year?
Right.
Wow. Seems very low.
Alrighty.
Page 98 is the expenditure side. It's fairly status quo, if there's any questions.
Any questions on expenditures for the building code fund? Not. Those expenditures are continued on to document page 99. Otherwise, we'll roll into the 911 tax fund.
We've done that one.
Oh, that's right, we did do some of these. We're hitting, oh, the Fund 10, okay. I just read the general obligation bond. I feel like we did that.
So we haven't actually looked at this page. We've talked about the GEO bond several times. This is essentially the fund that services the debt that was used to construct the fire station on Elrod.
And those numbers are on physical page 105 or PDF 108. And when is it this will be paid off?
It is 2028. There'll be a partial payment.
Okay. And that's the one where you saved us a bunch of money by redoing it, yeah?
Yes.
Awesome.
400,000, right?
This one was 800.
800,000.
Yes. And you guys saved the money because you voted to do that.
If we have no questions on that, rolls into the ESO, we already covered that. So we're scrolling down, we've got a fire equipment reserve fund.
And
And we
we have
talked-
covered that one.
Yep, thought we covered that. Water quality improvement fund, I don't think we covered that.
Nope.
So that'll be physical page 113 or PDF page 116. And this is largely focused on plant 1.
So this is the whole water quality asset, so it's plant 1,
Okay.
plant 2, collection sewer, collection storm. So on page 114, what you'll note there is, I want to go down to other financing sources. So we got a couple big projects coming up this year. The $2.2 million in 0403, those are our green parking lots that are coming up, and we're going to be bidding those very, very shortly. In fact, we're going to be bidding those in a week and a half. Fund 0406, you'll see 10 million. So that's our Plant 1 Phase 1 upgrade project. That project's going to be a 2-year project, and so this is what we're projecting we're going to spend year 1. And that project went out to bid on Tuesday, I believe.
Great.
Any questions on that?
And kind of emphasizing the importance of that. If that plant's 60 years old,
Oh, that plant was constructed in the 50s. The last upgrade was 1990.
okay. And if I remember right with those plants, it's supposed to be 20 years before a big renovation, and then 20 years after that, you replace the thing.
Well, it just depends. But yes, every 20 years it needs to see an upgrade of some sort. We'd like to reuse tankage if we can.
So it's a little overdue.
It is just a little.
And Jennifer, I think council just approved the last council meeting, $24 million to improve Plant 1.
Yes, design and construction costs.
Great.
Yeah.
Yep.
Many of us weren't here 20 years ago, Mr. Mayor.
So the first year's 10 million.
Don't remind him.
And the second year, 14 million.
Not to rub it in.
And Carmen, let me maybe step that back a minute. What Carmen asked is the first year 10 million, the second year 14 million. To date, we've spent around 2 million just in design costs.
Oh, okay.
Okay.
So next year will be about 12 or so.
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay. Going to page 115. So a couple things to note. As you may recall, Plant 2 is a newer plant. It went online 2018, and we have a $750,000 line item there. So part of our extra requirements and our NPDES permit was to televise the outfall pipe. And the outfall pipe needs a little repair. And so it's estimated that's going to be about $2 million in design services. We have to do bathymetric, we have to do underwater surveys, we have to do dye testing, mixing zone studies. It's a pretty intense effort. And so we have an RFQ that is going to go out next month to hire that engineer, and it's going to be about a 2-year effort between environmental and design.
This is a requirement now?
It was a requirement in our new permit. It was one of our new, along with the addition, I'm sorry?
When we did Plant 2?
Yes.
Plant 2, it was a requirement, we just never got to it.
It wasn't so much associated with the new Plant 2, it's associated with that 5-year permit cycle that we go under. They do a new permit every 5 years, they being DEQ. And so every 5 years, we get a new permit, and they have this EPA mandate where it has to get a little more stringent and a little more stringent. And so what we saw this year was extra testing and televising of our outfalls.
So just to clarify, that's not the physical plant itself that was just replaced a couple years ago. This is portions connecting to it.
This is the outfall. So this is what conveys our treated and disinfected water out to the bay, and it goes into a mixing zone and disperses the effluent. And it was built in 1950, and so it's past its useful life. Okay.
All right.
Okay. Then going down, you'll see we have around $3 million for our water quality collection systems. So those are pump stations 6 and 9 that we're going to upgrade. We're going to install new generators for 12 and 13, and we have 2 inflow and infiltration reduction projects.
We've got 23 of those pump stations, yeah?
We actually have,
I thought it was 24. I saw
it's-
23 somewhere.
so it's 23 sanitary sewer stations and 3 storm.
Okay. And those have 20-year lifespans, right?
They do, they do.
So we got to replace a little more than one a year.
Mhm.
And for people's edification, the reason that we have those pump stations is because of our topography.
Correct,
Same reason we have 2 wastewater plants.
correct.
Lucky.
I know, we're special. All righty.
So we have tide gates that we maintain also. It's for 100,000. We have listed on 3026.
Nope, let's see, 3026, yes. That is a grant and a loan that we got last year, and this is a continuation of that. And so what they are is they're design grants and loans, and the hope is that Business Oregon is going to put out a construction grant. Yes, we have, gosh, I think a little over 30 tie gates that we have to inspect and
Really?
maintain.
Okay.
Mhm.
Is there one over, Jennifer, on the walking path on the boardwalk? Is that one of the tide gates?
Yeah, if Curtis was to extend out,
Yeah.
yes.
And that's where we had to, the city generously helped repair that tide gate to help the port out because they didn't have the monies to do so. Do I have that correct?
Yeah, it was the berm. We
Okay,
repaired the berm.
Okay, thank you.
Is that money related to the dikes up in Inglewood as well?
No, though, there's a
Those are
couple in Inglewood, but the
arguably
ones that are
county.
further out are, yes.
Okay.
There's only a couple that they're city-owned.
Cool.
Is the issue that we're having, that we're hoping that some funding comes up for, is that what we see sometimes when we have high water and some flooding in the area of the railroad tracks on the highway?
It's a contributing factor.
Okay.
So repairing those tide gates not going to fix that problem. right?
Exactly. I mean, we're at sea level. We get intense storms here. If we have high storm surges in our bay, yes. High tides, king tides, yes. It's a contributing factor.
If I remember right, the king tide can move the library by about 1 inch up and down.
Rocks it, yeah.
So, yeah, we can do whatever we like with the tide gate.
But the local floods, they do have value. Local storms, excuse me.
Cool. Are we good to go?
Okay.
Appreciate it. That takes us to the jurisdictional Exchange Streets Reserve Fund. That's the one for the 23 miles of road that Coos Bay bought in 2000 from ODOT.
Correct. That was one of the additional funds that we talked about that we use for street maintenance. By city charter, we cannot use the $4.8 million that the city received from ODOT, I believe back in 2002-ish. Oh, yep, 2000. We can only use the interest off that. So you'll see on page 117 that we have a carryover balance that's spendable of $175,000, and this budget projects that we'll get another $15,000 in interest. So we have the ability to spend $190,000. As the mayor said earlier, it takes $1 million to reconstruct a 1 mile section of road. We've got 23 miles. Obviously, this isn't going to go very far. It can do some maintenance. What generally happens with this fund is we wait, let it gain a few more dollars, and then we use it on a project.
Ron, can you tell us what the interest rate is on that $4.8 million right now?
It is,
I'll have to phone a friend here.
so first of all, when you, the question is what the interest rate is on that. Turn your mics on. That's okay. I believe currently we're about 2.75.
3.25.
Oh, we've up a little bit more. So it's in the state pool.
Is there a way to put it somewhere else? Because You should be able to get better than that.
We should be able to get better than that, but we are limited under state law on where it's acceptable to put public funds.
Okay.
I tried
And
that
there's only
before.
one place?
Well, no, there are other, we just can't use the same sort of investments that the individuals can use. We have to, they are by the state treasurer, there's a list of the types of investments, even the banks that you can put your funds in.
But that investment interest income that is on here is probably going to be significantly more than that because this is only about 0.3 of 1%.
Agreed. Thank you for bringing that up. I think that should be 150. So we will likely, should we choose to make any expenditure out of this fund, which we usually let it build up for a bit before we do something. Obviously, 100 and some thousand isn't really going to do much of a project. So if we do that, we'd have to come back to you for a supplemental budget. That would have been another yellow sheet.
Do we need to make note of that for when we approve the budget, if we approve the budget? Okay.
I mean, we could do that if you wanted to do that, but we can just wait it out and do a supplemental budget
Yeah,
too.
if we're gonna
We're likely not
modify
going to
it
spend
anyway.
the money in this fund.
Okay.
So.
Cool. If we're good there, we can move on to the CAD Group Reserve Fund. It's computer-aided dispatch.
So I'll take that one as well. This is a fund that will go away, and it'll probably go away before the next budget cycle. We're going to put this in with Fund 10 because it is related to dispatch. This fund was created back in approximately 2002 when the city entered into an agreement with all of the law enforcement groups in this community, and we hosted the Law Enforcement Data Network, probably not the right term, the Computer-Aided Dispatch Network, and the Records Management System that all of the agencies used. At that time, the group looked at, we had a grant to build it, but how were we going to maintain it? So they created a fund and they did an assessment to all of the users, and then they all paid into that fund. Just like anything else over time, things have changed. Most of those users went to different systems, and now the only ones that's being served by this system are the City of Coos Bay and those that we provide dispatching services to. So we're going to move this fund back over into dispatch to be able to, again, to show the true cost of dispatch. But what you have here is a fund that's designed to have funds to replace that core equipment so that we can always have the proper amount of equipment that's necessary to provide the service.
Roger, sorry. So just to make sure I understand, we'll still provide services to the city of Coquille and the Coquille Indian Tribe, is that correct?
That's correct.
And we do that currently through our dispatch system
Correct.
going forward as well?
Yeah. This one was specific to some very specific shared equipment that we use to provide those services. And as we try to marriage those funds together to show the true cost of dispatch, none of us can think of a reason why we wouldn't combine this.
Got it. Thank you very much.
Any further questions, or we can roll on to Rainy Day Reserve Fund?
So I will take that. So the Rainy Day Reserve Fund is our kind of savings account here at the city. By city council vote previously, we established 2.5% of the ending fund balance from the general fund each year is transferred into this fund. We do that after the audit's completed and we have good solid numbers that we're confident with. We transfer those funds over. It sits here in case of an emergency. We have had, in the past, we used that to cover the payment for the GO bond when we refinanced. We had actually 2 payments in that year. We didn't have capacity because our GO bond fund account we couldn't access those funds, they were in unappropriated. So we used this temporarily and repaid as soon as the year flipped over when we had budget authority. We have used a little bit of these funds this year for some nuisance abatement, for some unsafe homes that needed to come down, which we will then put on liens on those properties, so hopefully recoup those funds when those properties change hands. So if you have any questions.
Didn't we use some of the funds for the pipe that broke in front of Morgan Bed? A sinkhole?
No, I don't believe we used it for that one. No.
Okay.
We used it for abatement of a problem out in Empire and then abatement for the homes on Broadway near where those pipes broke.
That's right. Okay, great. Thank you.
When those houses get abated, do we acquire the property? Is that gonna be another opportunity to put out an RFP and help somebody build some housing?
No, the council, and I believe wisely, chose not to go after that property because
Oh,
it's
no, not the two houses, no.
correct, not the ones on Broadway, but the intent is, should the homeowner not pay for the abatement out in Empires, then to move forward on a foreclosure. And fortunately, we'll probably have to tear that home down.
Yeah.
And then surplus the property.
Cool. Yeah, no, not the ones that were on the highway.
Why would we go after the property here?
It's on a steep slope that is slipping, and if we take that on, we assume the liability for that slope. And the cost to repair that slope will far exceed the value of the property or the amount of money we've put into removing the homes.
The past owner compromised the stability of the hillside, so. Yeah,
It is actually a pretty small lot too with access issues.
yeah. But, any other questions on this section?
Yes, the 3001 construction item, is that actually an expenditure in the next budget year, or is that just sort of a placeholder to allow these funds to accumulate?
Yeah, so both the contractual 2108 and the 3001 are placeholders. So those categories are open. That would give us capacity if we needed to have an expenditure. There are no planned expenditures for this fund, though.
Thank you.
Nicole?
Yes.
That money can't be spent unless there's a supermajority of the council, isn't that correct?
Correct. Thank you.
I forget how many of us constitute a supermajority, 5? Okay, I thought so, 5. Alrighty. In that case, I think we're on to capital improvement fund.
So I'll take that. You may remember this is a fund that we kind of closed a bunch of capital improvement funds and put into this one location. So it's got several different revenue sources as well as several different project focuses. We are in this fund also receiving our timber revenue when we get it. It will come in here. This fund services our technology needs here at the city through the tech fund. You'll see streets is a significant portion of this fund. So our transportation utility fee hits this fund and those projects that are supported by that fee. So that is the revenues there. And if it ever moves. Yeah, so within this fund is streets and, gosh, there's a whole list. Let's go back to that. So special improvement fund, there was some like local improvement districts that were established historically. We're not really doing those right now, but there are some leftover dollars from that. The street improvement fund was added here. Parks improvement, bike ped path, major capital and technology. So that private grants and donations was related to a parks dollars. So, you know, it goes down significantly because it's unknown if we're going to get those kinds of dollars again. So kind of one-off item there in revenue.
But when we do receive grants and they come throughout the year, then we'll do the supplemental budget to
Yes.
add in, to allow us to take the funds in and allow us to spend the dollars.
Yeah, might be.
I have another question related to grants. Has there been any consideration in hiring a grant writer for the whole city instead of partialing that out?
Well, one certainly could. It's just things are really tight, and we're always worried about the ending fund balance. And currently, there just isn't enough funds sitting there for capacity to do that.
Roger, don't we also have we do have that arrangement with CCD that helps us write grants, and we use other people as well, correct?
We have. We also used funding through Urban Renewal, and we hired a grant writer specific to the Egyptian Theater who assisted us in getting quite a bit of money to help put that back together.
I mean, a good grant writer can bring in millions and millions a year. I mean, I did it at SWAC, so I know what can be brought in.
Mm-hmm.
The cool thing is, I don't disagree with you, this group, I mean, as a council, we're spoiled because there's
They do a good
always
job,
grants
yeah.
that we're receiving as a result of them writing them. But maybe something for next year's budget, 2025.
Could be.
Okay.
Okay, so that's just more of the resources, which is also gets funding from other funds. Most of that funding coming in from transfers of other funds is related to supporting our tech needs here at the city. Technology, sorry. Can you go on the next page? And then this kind of in the capital outlay section is really where it breaks down those different funds that were brought together in here. So you can kind of see that. Historically, we would have every other year some timber revenue. We're not expecting any until likely summer, which may not come in this budget year. We would normally buy a couple police vehicles with that, and those are pretty exceed the amount that's there. So these vehicles, between the vehicle and the outfitting, it's usually a little bit more than that. We are going to purchase 2 vehicles, but they will be a travel vehicle and a detective vehicle, so it won't have as much outfitting. And then just some very small little projects at the city. The largest portion you're going to see there is the street work that we're going to be doing.
All righty. Questions, comments, concerns? Or we will roll into system development charges, which I didn't think we charge SDCs.
We don't currently, however, we have in the past, and there are funds still available there. So we just maintain this fund so that it stays separate and distinct. Those SDC charges are tied to an SDC plan. We can only spend those dollars on elements that are within that plan. There's no intention to do anything with these dollars at this point in time, but we do still have to budget for them.
Yep. Do we have any questions on that? Not much to talk about, just kind of a pot of somewhat restricted money. Otherwise, we've rolled into close. Oh.
And I would say that you said that perfectly. There was another city in Oregon that misused their SDC funds, and they were audited, and they had to pay $2 million back out of their general fund to the SDC funds.
Yeah, not worth it.
No.
What can those funds be used for?
They're generally used for capacity, improving capacity. So if it's a wastewater project and it was identified as a project when that plan was put together, like it needed to enlarge a pipe or it needed to enlarge a pump station, then those funds could be used for that. Or we did use it for the new treatment plant in Empire, I believe a portion of it, because that was identified in the plan.
Okay.
And we also had previously some transportation SDC funds that had been collected historically, and those were used with the safe routes because we put in a bunch of sidewalks there that were not in existence previously. So that closed out essentially those funds.
So when you're talking about a plan, you're talking about a plan that was in place when those were collected, To actually go back and spend those in a different way, we would have to reestablish a plan, and that is a significant process.
Correct.
So those funds will be there as long as that process takes.
Yeah, well, some of the reason you're not doing it is, would that hinder economic development? And I think that's been the discussion with this council ongoing. And so prior, we did it, and then it was decided when Mayor McEwen came on, they would eliminate it to try to boost economic development. And I don't think this council since then, or a council prior or after that, has decided to go that route. And at this point, I don't think it's what we should do anyway. So
Well, staff have created some pretty creative alternatives.
Yeah, absolutely. I heard someone say in Portland now, the SCDC for a house is like over 100,000.
Wow.
Yeah. Yep.
All right. Well, with that, that takes us to closed funds, which, as you recall from the urban renewal portion, was basically the end of it. Let's see, document page 141 is the more complicated version of what I call time-based accounting. It has a much longer name than that. 142, you get into the breakdowns of percentages of staff time as estimated based on best data available, and down to the glossary of terms. So, if nobody wants to circle back on anything, we can dive into motions.
That's a great idea, Counselor.
Sounds like we're in motions. First, we will need a motion to approve permanent tax rates. That's what?
I move that we impose the city's maximum permanent tax rate of 6.3643 per $1,000 taxable assessed value for fiscal year 2023-2024.
Second?
We have a motion and a second. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Motion passes unanimous. Next one, motion to approve imposing general obligation bonded debt.
I'll make a motion to approve imposing general obligation bonded debt in the amount of $563,000 and $667,000.
It's actually 536.
What did I say, 63? 536, $667,000.
Second?
We have a motion and a second. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Motion passes unanimous. Last one, motion to approve proposed budget for the fiscal year 2023 to 2024.
I'll make a motion to approve the proposed budget for the fiscal year 2023-2024 and forward to the City Council for adoption at the June 6, 2023 council meeting.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Hearing none, motion passes unanimous, and we are adjourned. Somebody gave me a hammer.
Thank you for all your work.
Yes, thank you.
Thank you to the city staff. Drew, best meeting ever.
I should have stalled. I hit my time.
Remember, we started at 6. Yeah. It was not bad. I felt like we talked a lot.
Well, actually, I think we've gone to 10
Pretty good.
Yeah.
on budget.